This is an FN2 Honda Civic Type R, and it's basically the Jaden Smith of cars, because it's got quirky looks, and everyone prefers its dad. When the FN2 came out in 2007, it was met with a lukewarm reception. Its predecessor, the EP3, is hot hatch royalty, and in the eyes of many, this car failed to live up to those high standards. In fact, I still remember Jeremy Clarkson absolutely trashing this thing on Top Gear, which in the mid-2000s was pretty much a death sentence for a car. So, fast forward 12 years to 2019. Is there any reason that you should consider buying this car today? Actually, yes. And that reason is... Vtec, brah! Because if you know anything about this car, you know that it's all about the engine. It's a lovely, naturally aspirated 2 litre that revs to over 8,000 RPM. That's mental! And of course, this engine comes with Honda's legendary Vtec, which most of you probably understand, but for that one person who doesn't and has always pretended that they do, here's a very simple explanation. When you rev this engine past 5,400 RPM, it starts opening its valves wider, letting more air into the engine, allowing it to burn more fuel, allowing it to make more power. It's kind of like a little tiny nitrous boost. Now, having never driven a car with Vtec, I've always wondered, can you really feel it when it kicks in? Let's have a go now. We're at 4,000 RPM, second gear, 4.5, 5. Vtec, there it is! Yeah, you can. Look, it's not pressing me into my seat, but you can feel it and you can hear it as well. The car just becomes angrier. I liked that. And look at this. We've got upshift lights in the dash. Do you know what else has those? A Ferrari Enzo. My Golf GTI red lines at 6 and a bit thousand RPM. This thing doesn't even get started until 5,400. And when the Vtec comes on, you've still got the best part of 3,000 more RPM to play with. What an engine! Unfortunately, the rest of this car can't quite keep up with the brilliance of that engine. One especially disappointing area is the ride. It's not terrible, and you expect a hot hatch to be firm, but it's harder than it needs to be. And that's a shame because the interior is very nice. It's interesting looking, everything is pretty high quality, the seats are lovely. If the ride was better, the FN2 would be a good motorway cruiser, but instead you find yourself driving clenched because you know that if you hit a medium-sized pothole, the car is going to tear you a new bumhole. And there are other problems too. The steering is a little bit numb, there's not a huge amount of feel. The car as a whole feels quite large, and because it's naturally aspirated, because you have to get right up it to make it come alive, it feels pretty dull at low speed. In fact, it feels like it has no power at all. Oh, and also, you can't see anything out the back. But look on the bright side, at least we've got a massive wing that's definitely making actual downforce to the back of this front-wheel drive car. And then there's the biggest problem with this car, which is the EP3 Type R. Because actually, right now, you can pick up either one cheaply for maybe £3,000. And in that earlier car, you get the same Vtec engine in a lighter package that handles better. 12 years later then, it seems that the FN2 is still stuck in the shadow of the car that preceded it. And since they cost about the same, it sounds like an easy choice. Well, hang on. Because there are actually a few areas where this car has its predecessor beaten. For one, it's newer, which obviously means that it's a bit nicer inside and it's got a bit more tech, but it also means that you may have an easier time finding one of these for cheap that hasn't been absolutely ragged. Then there's the engine. First of all, I'm told that this car sounds a lot better than the EP3. That was a big criticism of the car that came before that. This one sounds good. But there's something else about the engine, and I'm about to get properly nerdy here. This car might be the purest expression of Vtec of any Civic Type R. Because here's the thing, the EP3 that came before this, you don't get Vtec until higher up the rev range, about 5,800, so you don't use it as much. And the car that came after this one, well, it went turbo. So the whole Vtec thing kind of went out the window. This is arguably the best Vtec a Type R experience that you can get in any Civic. And in a car that's all about the engine, that's a big deal. And then there's the way it looks. Now, we can all agree that the EP3 is a timeless and understated looking car. It's lovely. But I'll tell you what, I love the way this thing looks. I'm sure plenty of you will disagree with me, but I just think it's so unusual, so interesting. It's got triangular exhausts, for goodness sake. Honestly, if you don't like the way this car looks, you hate fun. Am I saying that this is the best Civic Type R ever? No. But I do think it's way better than people give it credit for. And in the real world, there are legitimate reasons why you should consider buying one of these over an EP3. There really are. The FN2 Type R is without a doubt a more tempting prospect now than it was when it was new. Naturally aspirated hot hatches aren't really a thing anymore. So when you get a Honda that revs to 8,000 RPM, it feels a bit special. In fact, it's so special that you find yourself willing to forgive the car for its other drawbacks. Who needs steering feel? Who needs a spine? I've got 8,000 RPM in a Honda. It definitely isn't perfect, and the previous model will always be the purist's choice. But the fact remains that on real roads, the FN2 is just a very exciting car to drive. And frankly, if you just imagine that you're paying for the engine and getting the rest of the car for free, it's the bargain of the century.